Hello everyone, my name is Jackson Helm from InvictorX Games. This is the first part of a gameplay introduction video series for our inaugural game, Song for War Mediterranean Theater. This video will cover the largest of the 4 phases in this game, the tactical phase. Information on the tactical phase begins on page 8 of the official Song for War Mediterranean Theater rulebook. You can find that rulebook in PDF form at invictorx.com. The hypothetical scenario we're looking at here covers an attempt by the Allies to gain full control of North Africa. Following an Axis retreat out of Tobruk and into Benghazi, the United States forces, shown here in green, and Great Britain forces, shown here in blue, prepare to flank yellow Italian and red German forces, destabilize their defensive position, and ultimately take Benghazi. The Allied forces already possess the Tobruk objective. The token for it can be found here on the victory track. Let's review the forces in the area. Inside Benghazi, all of the military forces present are Italian. The Italian forces are 3 fighters, 2 tanks, 1 anti-aircraft gun, and 3 infantry. German forces nearby in Derna include 2 fighters, 1 infantry, 2 submarines off the coast, and an artillery in the mountains nearby. The British Air Force controls a number of planes in Tobruk, including multiple fighters and light bombers, along with a tank and 1 infantry. There's also naval power off the coast, in the form of a destroyer and a battleship. They also have forces back home in Alexandria. The United States, flanking from the left, controls 3 tanks and a land transport with multiple infantry. They also have an aircraft carrier in the area, carrying 2 fighters. It's also escorted by a destroyer. Now that the stage is set, let's begin the tactical phase. In Song for War Mediterranean Theater, instead of each of the 4 playable nations taking turns moving their units, movement is done by side, and each movement step is done by unit. Let's turn our attention to the player aid. The blue movement steps are listed here. Let's start with movement step 1, where fighters and submarines are allowed to move. Since we are in stage 3 of the game in this scenario, the Allied side moves first. Both Great Britain and the United States control fighters in the area. Let's move them. It's important to note that fighters move again in movement step 2, and also must return home in movement step 6. So let's not get too far away from where we're stationed. Since Great Britain and the United States are both allied nations, they can move their units together. Knowing that more forces on the way, the United States and Great Britain may not want to engage right away, so they'll move their fighters just outside Benghazi here. The US will do the same. During gameplay, all aircraft are considered to be in the air. The Allied side does not control any submarines in the area. Since there are no spaces in conflict, there are no battles to declare, and the Allied movement step 1 is over. Now it's time for the Axis movement step 1. Italian forces control 3 fighters in Benghazi. The Germans control 2 fighters on the Derna airfield. There are also 2 German submarines just off the coast of Derna. Understanding that a conflict in Benghazi is imminent, the German fighters decide to move into Benghazi. This is only 2 spaces away and is a legal move. The Italian fighters choose to stay put inside Benghazi for the same reason. This leaves the 2 subs up here. Submarines are listed here. They have a movement of 3. In order to deter British naval activity, the 2 submarines are going to move in to this space, where there is already a British battleship and a destroyer. Since these 2 units moved at least 1 space and ended their movement in a space that contains enemy units, a battle must be declared. This is done by taking one of these markers and placing it on the space. This concludes movement step 1 for the Axis. However, since a battle was declared, we now must go through the battle step list. Let's start the battle. In a full game of Song for War Mediterranean Theater, there may be multiple battles going on at any one time. The attackers choose when to resolve each of those battles, but they must all be resolved. Let's go back to the player aid. The battle steps, much like the movement steps, are numbered, and each battle can be completed by following these steps in order. The battle steps are also executed by unit. However, since not every type of unit in the game may be in one battle, some of these may be skipped. Let's take a look at this. On the player aid, the first battle step lets anti-aircraft get a shot. There are no anti-aircraft guns present, and there are no planes, so there would be nothing to shoot at anyway. Let's skip that one. Battle step 2 is about fighters. There are none here. Same thing with 3, which has light bombers and heavy bombers. Again, none are present. Things get interesting when we reach battle step 4, where submarines and destroyers are allowed to fight. All of the units listed in one battle step attack and defend at the same time. On the left side of the player aid, where units and their attributes are listed, we can see the firepower of each unit, and the armor. The attacking German submarines, for example, have a blue armor. They also have a blue firepower. They need 9 to hit, and you can only hit C units. Let's roll for the German submarines. Since there are 2 submarines, I'll use 2 blue dice. Submarines have blue firepower. I've rolled a 2 and an 11 for each of the submarines. Since submarines have a firepower of 9, this 2 is a miss. However, since 11 is greater than or equal to 9, this is a hit. The British destroyer, however, also gets a defense roll. Destroyers are here. They have a firepower of 8. Submarines are considered to be submerged at all times. However, since the destroyer has the sonar ability, it's able to detect and fire at them. Now I'll roll for the defense roll for the British destroyer. I've rolled an 8, so that's a hit. Since Germany and Great Britain each got a hit, they must each take away 1 casualty. The team that has sustained the hit typically decides which unit will be the casualty for that battle step. There are a few exceptions to that, which we can come to later. Germany has 2 subs, so they must remove 1. Great Britain, of course, removes the destroyer, since that is the only unit that has a blue armor. During any combat phase, when units are firing at each other, follow their firepower, specifically the color. Hits scored by units with blue firepower can only remove units with blue armor. This battleship has red level armor, which is 2 higher than blue. It's not a candidate to be removed. The destroyer, however, has blue armor, so that must be taken away. Battle step 4 is now over, so we can move to battle step 5. In this step, battleships are allowed to go. Battleships are powerful sea units. They move 3, have a red armor, and also have a unique scheme of different attacks they can use. However, the battleship does not have the sonar ability. Since subs are considered to be always submerged, the battleship can't do much of anything. Since battle steps 6 and 7 don't apply here based on the units within them, this battle is over, and we can remove the marker. Spaces can still be contested even after a battle is over. Now that the Axis movement step 1 is over, it's time for the Allied movement step 2. Movement step 2 includes destroyers, sea transports, and all aircraft. Great Britain controls a heavy bomber in Alexandria. These are very powerful air units. Heavy bombers can move up to 7, but they only have a blue armor, so it's important to defend them while they're in the air. Usually this is done with fighters. Since the heavy bomber can move 7, Great Britain elects to move this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces into Benghazi. Other aircraft can also move. Each of the fighters move 1 more space into Benghazi. Great Britain also has a sea transport over here. Sea transports also move on step 3. In Song for War Mediterranean Theater, each nation can only put their own units on transports. Units are loaded onto the transport, moved, and unloaded all in the same movement step. Sea transports can move 3. So let's move ours. 1, 2. The sea transport is currently carrying 2 infantry units. The United States decides to move their destroyer to go assist with this. 1, 2, 3. Great Britain also chooses to move their light bombers into Benghazi. With all planes on this movement step accounted for, let's declare some battles. This is an obvious candidate. This also applies. Since the Allies are attacking, they can choose which order they want to resolve these conflicts. The Allies elect to start with Conflict B. Once again, we return to the battle steps. There are still no AA or fighters, light bombers, or heavy bombers, so the first 3 are skipped. We once again return to battle step 4, where submarines and destroyers can fight. The United States has 1 destroyer in the area, so let's roll for it first. That's an 8, which means it's a hit. The German submarine gets a defense roll in this same battle step. That's a 3, which means this is a miss. Since the Allies in battle step 4 got a hit, but the Axis did not, only the Axis takes away a casualty. The only eligible unit is this submarine. The space is no longer contested, and the battle is over. Now let's turn our attention to Battle A. There are lots of units inside, so let's spread them out. Let's start this battle with the battle steps, just like we always have. In Battle Step 1, anti-aircraft guns are able to shoot. The Italian military has one in Benghazi. Anti-air guns have a blue firepower of 9 and can only attack air units, as shown by this symbol. Let's roll. That's a 9, which is a hit. Since Battle Step 1 occurs before Battle Steps 2 and 3, where other planes go, the anti-aircraft gun effectively gets to shoot without being shot back at in this battle step. Therefore, the Allies must remove one of their planes. Great Britain decides to remove one of their fighters. Step 2 is fighter combat. There are a lot of them here. Let's roll for the Allied fighters first. There are 2 British fighters in the area, so let's roll for them. 2 hits.
And now the Americans.
1 hit. The Allied fighters got a total of 3 hits. Now let's roll the defense rolls for the Axis fighters, of which there are 5. First, the Italian fighters. Uh-oh, one of the Italian fighters got a 12. This means a special ability comes into play. The 2 German fighters go next. They also get 1 hit for a total of 2. Let's return to the player aid to talk about that 12. On the player aid, fighters have this symbol listed under their abilities. This is the symbol for precise hit. This means the nation with the fighter that got the hit can decide which of the enemy units should be taken away as a casualty. Fearing the power of the heavy bomber, that's an obvious choice. The Axis decides to take away the heavy bomber with their precise hit. Since 1 more hit was added, the United States will also take away one of their fighters. For the 3 hits the Allies had, the Italians will take away 2 fighters, and the Germans will take away 1. Battle Step 2 is now over. Let's move on to battle step 3. There aren't any heavy bombers anymore, but there are 2 light bombers. Light bombers have 2 different fire powers. This blue 10 only comes into play when they're on defense, as shown by this little marker here.
However, on the attack, light bombers can fire at land and sea units at an 8 or higher. Since there are land units in Benghazi, the light bombers have something to shoot at. Let's roll.
Following firepower rules, light bombers attack with yellow dice, which are more powerful than the blue. There are 2 British light bombers, so let's roll for both of them at the same time. Ouch, 2 misses. The next battle step is step 4, which talks about subs and destroyers. There aren't any here on land, so we can skip that one. Now it's time for battle step 5. Battle step 5 is similarly skipped. There aren't any of these types of units inside the square, and there aren't any land units for this artillery to fire at. Why can this artillery fire inside? It acts as a supporter. You can read about this in the rules here. However, since there aren't any land units, we can skip. There are Axis tanks and infantry inside Benghazi, but since there are no allied land units, they don't have anything to fire at, so we skip step 6. The same goes for step 7. This battle, for the moment, is over. Now it's time for the Axis movement step 2. Unfortunately for the Axis, they don't have any destroyers or sea transports on the board right now. Fearing the chance of quickening their fate in Benghazi, the Axis elects to not move any of their planes. Despite this space being contested, the fact that the Axis did not move any planes or choose to activate the space means that no battle takes place there. At least not this movement step. Since the Axis didn't move very much that step, it's time for the Allied step 3. In step 3, all boats move. In an attempt to claim this valuable airfield, the Allies move this destroyer and this sea transport near Derna. This sea transport is going to try to unload its units in Derna. This counts as a battle. Since 2 spaces are being affected by this battle, both Derna and the sea space off the coast, let's use 2 battle markers with the same letter to show that this is the same battle, just affecting 2 spaces. The Allies don't have that much else to move, so they'll stay put for now. They are also unable to declare another battle in Benghazi, because all 3 of these types of units are not in movement step 3. Let's head to the battle steps. Despite Derna, because it's an airfield, having an anti-air shot, there aren't any planes in the air, so this step is irrelevant. The same goes for steps 2 and 3, since there aren't any planes in the air. There is a destroyer, but since there's no enemy sea units that it can attack, this step also gets skipped. Step 5 is where some of the fun begins. Units that have range, such as battleships and artillery, can support nearby battles. Song for War Mediterranean Theater has supporting fire, where units that have range and are within range of a battle occurring are able to attack. This artillery has a range of 1, which is boosted to 2 because it is in a mountain. See the rules for more information on that. Is within range of this destroyer and sea transport. This battleship is within range of this soldier in Derna. Since they go in the same battle step, we can roll for them at effectively the same time. Let's roll for the artillery first. Artillery units have a firepower that is yellow, and I need to roll an 8 or higher. They can attack land and sea units. Let's roll our 1 yellow die. That's a hit. This 11 means that the Allies must select one of these 2 ships to be taken away as a casualty. They, of course, select the destroyer. Now let's roll for the battleship. The battleship has a unique firepower scheme. It rolls 1 red and 1 yellow die, and can attack anything on land or sea. Since this poor soldier is on land, he is within range of the battleship. Battleships also have a range of 2. 1, 2. As a reminder, intersections at corners cannot be jumped over as 1 space. Let's fire for the battleship. 1 red and 1 yellow die. That's a 6 on the yellow die, which means it's a hit. As you can see on the player aid down here, a yellow hit is equivalent to 2 blue hits. Since there's only 1 blue unit, however, this unit is the only casualty and must be taken away. All of the infantry are on the boat, and there are no tanks in this battle, so this gets skipped. Finally, in Battle Step 7, sea and air transports unload. Originally, if there were more units in Derna, they would get a landing defense, in which they get an effectively free shot at whoever is landing and unloading from the transport. That infantry unit was destroyed, so there is no landing defense, and these 2 British infantry immediately move in to take Derna. The battle is over. In Song for War Mediterranean Theater, objectives and airfields like Derna are exchanged real-time. Since there are no enemy units in Derna and it is not contested, the Allies immediately gain control. They get this tile, Derna, which is worth 3/4 of a victory point. Not a lot, but it can help in the long run. It fits nicely in here. The Axis doesn't control any boats anymore, so their movement step 3 is already over. Now it's time for the Allied movement step 4. In movement step 4, anti-air, tanks, artillery, infantry, and land transports can go. Let's move some of these units around. Land transports have a movement of 3, and so do tanks. They're able to comfortably move into Benghazi for another assault. Since these Allied units moved into Benghazi, where there are already Axis units, a battle must be declared. Once again, let's spread the units out. Let's get it started with the battle steps again. There is an anti-air gun, and it gets a shot. Let's roll for it. That's an 11, which is a hit. Great Britain elects to remove 1 fighter. Now it's time for Battle Step 2, where fighters get to fire. Looks like both sides have 2 fighters. Let's roll for the Allies first. One hit. Now let's roll for the Axis. 2 hits. Since they're in the same battle step, these casualties are removed at the same time. The Axis got 2 hits, so the United States and Great Britain will each remove their last fighter. The Axis chooses to accept the casualty and remove this final German fighter from the fight. Let's move on to Battle Step 3, where light bombers get to fire. There are still 2 British light bombers over Benghazi, so they both get to shoot. Light bombers have a yellow firepower and can hit land and sea units. Let's roll for them.
One hit.
Let's go back to this part of the player aid. Since light bomber firepower is yellow, the Axis have the option of removing different types of units. They can remove either 1 unit with a yellow armor or 2 units with blue armor. The Axis chooses to remove 2 units with blue armor. Those will be 2 infantry. The Axis don't have any heavy bombers, so Step 3 is done. Step 4, since it includes submarines and destroyers, also doesn't apply, since there aren't any there. In Battle Step 5, artillery get to shoot. Once again, there aren't any in Benghazi, but there is one within range that can support against land units that are invading the area. It gets a roll. Much like the light bombers, artillery have yellow firepower, and it can attack land and sea units. The artillery got a 12, which means another special ability comes into play. Artillery have the extra shot ability, shown by this symbol with the +1. This means if they roll a 12, they're able to roll again, and keep the hit from the last roll. Unfortunately, this time was a miss. The previous hit still applies, however. So, similarly, the Allies have the option of removing either 1 yellow unit or 2 blue units. The Americans will remove 1 infantry and 1 land transport. Now it's time for Battle Step 6, where tanks and infantry get to go. The Italians have 1 infantry and 2 tanks, where the Americans have 3 tanks and 1 infantry. Great Britain also has a tank. These units all get their rolls at the same time. First, let's roll for the American tanks. That's 3 hits. Let's roll for the British tank. Also a hit. Finally, let's roll for the blue firepower infantry. That's a miss. That's a total of 4 yellow hits for the Allies. Now let's roll for the Axis. First, the 2 tanks. 2 hits. And next, their 1 infantry. A miss. That totals 4 yellow hits for the Allies and 2 for the Axis. Casualties can be removed now. The Allies elect to remove 2 American tanks. The Axis, having sustained 4 yellow hits, have to remove everything. 2 yellow hits for the tanks, and 1 yellow hit, which levels up to 2 blue hits, for the infantry and the anti-air. Since there are no more Axis units in Benghazi that are capable of controlling the space, a property measured by these orange flags above each unit, control is immediately handed over to the Allies. That means the Allies get this tile, which fits nicely next to Tobruk. There aren't any sea transports and air transports unloading, which means Battle Step 7 can be skipped. That means this battle is over. This Italian fighter is still over Benghazi, but since it can't control spaces, it is unable to control Benghazi, and the Allies take control. It stays in the air. Now it's time for the Axis movement step 4. Artillery move on movement step 4, so the Germans choose to fire with this artillery. They'll fire at Derna. Since there aren't any more units to move, let's go to the battle steps and resolve this battle. There are no AA, fighters, light bombers, heavy bombers, submarines, or destroyers, so 1 through 4 are all skipped. The artillery now fires in battle step 5. This battleship can't support because it is not in range of this artillery, so it stays put. The artillery gets to fire. That's a hit. Once again, since 1 yellow hit is equivalent to 2 blue hits, both of these blue armor units are removed from Derna. And the battle is over. Now it's time for the Allied movement step 5. Tanks, land transports, and infantry can move. The Allies would like to try to take out this artillery so it doesn't bother them anymore. However, tanks are unable to move in mountains. Only this infantry can move up there, so it does. Infantry have a movement of 1, and this is only 1 space away. A battle is once again declared. Since the infantry moved out of this contested space and into this space, the Allies have an option of declaring a battle here. However, in order to not risk these light bombers because of the presence of the fighter, the Allies choose to not declare a battle. Therefore, the only battle here is Battle A. As we can see on the battle steps for Battle A, there are no anti-air, no fighters, no light bombers or heavy bombers, no ships, but artillery is present. so it'll fire. The artillery fires and misses. On battle step 6, the infantry finally gets to go. Let's roll for the infantry. They have a blue firepower, so I'll roll a blue die. That's a 12, so another special ability comes into play once again. As we can see in the player aid, infantry have this symbol under their abilities, which is the symbol for level up. This means any 12 that they roll automatically gets increased to a yellow firepower. So in effect, the infantry have just dealt a yellow hit to the axis instead of a blue. Since the hit was yellow and the only unit in the area is a yellow defending artillery, that artillery must be removed. There are no other units, so the battle is over. The Axis doesn't have any units left in this area, so they don't do anything on step 5. Now it's time for movement step 6, which is the air unit's return step. In movement step 6, air units can move up to their full movement and must return to a friendly airfield.
This British light bomber decides to fly to Derna, which is now a friendly airfield.
We control it over here. This light bomber decides to stay put in Benghazi, since it's now controlled by Allied units. Each objective also acts as an airfield. No battles may be declared on movement step 6. Since there are no Axis-controlled objectives or airfields anywhere in the area, unfortunately, this Italian fighter is destroyed. It can't reach anywhere within its movement to be able to land. This concludes the tactical phase. Since all movement steps have been completed and all battles have been resolved, the tactical phase is now over. It's time to move on to the victory phase. Thank you for watching this video about the tactical phase in Song of War Mediterranean Theater. For more information, visit invictorx.com. Have a wonderful day.